Welcome to the second season in MLS FC Cincinnati. Now, there's no denying, last season was an epic disaster for FC Cincinnati, and that they had one of the worst season as an expansion team in MLS history. They finished the season with only 6 wins, 6 draw, and 22 losses, and they only had 24 points in total last season. They only scored 31 goals, which is the least amount by any MLS team. They conceded 75 goals, which is the most goal conceded by any MLS team. And their goal differential is minus 44, which is the worst in all of MLS. And last season's summary, as I mentioned, they finished last in the Eastern Conference. They got knocked out at the round of 16 in the US Open Cup. And I didn't add it here on the last season summary, but they also won the wooden spoon and being the worst team in MLS last season. Now, despite the fact that they had a epic failure in their expansion year, things might be looking up for FC Cincinnati. And I think a couple of weeks ago when I look at the roster, I have a feeling that they would be at least a little bit better than they were in the first season, but there wasn't really a lot of hope of me saying that they could just have a dramatic improvement where they can be playoff contention. Now, after some of the moves that they have made, and especially they made a big move just happened a couple of days ago, maybe that makes me believe that they could maybe sneak into this playoff conversation. But first of all, in terms of player that's going to be in for FC Cincinnati, we got Brendan Vasquez, Harris Madunian, Sad Abdul Salam, Tom Patterson, Yoya Kubo, and the difference maker, Jurgen Lacadia. When they signed Jurgen Lacadia a couple of days ago, that is instantly what makes me believe that they could really sneak into that conversation of being a playoff team. Because this is a guy that I think he's going to be one of the best striker in the league, and that I won't be surprised if he has the help to give him service. He can easily score 15 goals in this league. I mean, I know some people might say, well, he didn't have a great time when he was at Brighton, and he's kind of having a meh kind of season when he was on loan at Hoffenheim. Still, I think this move of him, like he coming to MLS, might be one of the best way for him. And we've seen before where players in Europe, they tend to kind of struggle a little bit, but once they come to MLS, they immediately make an impact. And I have a feeling that's what Jurgen Lacadia is going to be. And the other guys that they got besides Jurgen Lacadia, who I don't know exactly how much they pay him, but from what I heard, it's around $9 to $10 million in transfer fee, which is a lot of money for a MLS club to try to pay a striker. And usually when you have an MLS club that pay that striker that much money, you probably are expecting him to be a very decent kind of player. And as I said, the other player that they got was Adrian Regantin, which, remember how I said in the news of the week, I thought that he was going to be the number 10 that is going to give service to Lacadia, which he still could, but the thing is, he's not a number 10. He's actually a winger, and I kind of did some research to see what kind of player he is. He's actually a winger, so yeah, that's kind of me misspoken of him thinking that he is a number 10. And speaking of number 10, a little bit spoiler, well, kind of something that I'm going to be talking about is that is pretty much something that FC Cincinnati is missing, and that is something that, if they can get that number 10, they could potentially be in that conversation of maybe making the playoffs in the Eastern Conference. Now, in terms of players that is out for FC Cincinnati, these players that I'm about to talk to shouldn't surprise a lot of people of why they're no longer with this team. I mean, we knew that FC Cincinnati was going to have a fire sale, and they're just going to strip down most of the players that they built that roster in the expansion year, because we knew that when they built that roster in the expansion year, it was clearly not good enough. So guys that were in that expansion that FC Cincinnati built, in the expansion year are guys like Roland Lamar, Corbin Bone, Justin Hoy, Victor Uriola, Forrest Lasso, Derek Etienne Jr., although Etienne Jr. actually came to FC Cincinnati in the second half of the season. Alvis Pyle, Leandro Bertone, Fernando Audi, Emmanuel Ledesma, and Jimmy Hogg are all out of this team, and basically FC Cincinnati is having pretty much just hit the reset button here, and now they are, of course, slowly building up a squad that they hope that this time they got it right in terms of when they tried to build it in their expansion year. Now, in terms of the goal scored for FC Cincinnati, as I mentioned before, it's got to be Jurgen Locadia. Yuya Kubo could definitely help out in terms of the goal scoring department, and that's the beautiful thing about Jurgen Locadia, and that I don't think he necessarily need to be the guy that is going to be the guy that's going to just carry this FC Cincinnati team on his back and scoring a bunch of goals, even though I put him as the goal scorer, and usually when you're the main goal scorer, you're going to have to do that kind of stuff. But they do have a luxury of Yakubo, which, you know, I don't know if he's going to be the guy that will at least put a little bit less pressure off of Jurgen Locadia and at least can score a couple of goals to kind of put the load a little bit off of Locadia's shoulder. But still, I think Locadia is clearly the goal scorer of this team. Now, playmaker, I'm going to say Harris Medunian with a question mark. I really like the fact that they got Medunian from the Union. You know, this is a guy that I know he is started to get a little bit near the end of his career, and that he's already near his mid-30s. But this is a guy that last season proved that he still have stuff left in the tank, and he was the leading assist player for the Union, even though he wasn't a number 10. And knowing the fact that, you know, if FC Cincinnati is not going to get a number 10 and that they need to have some playmakers from that midfield role, Harris Medunian will be the perfect answer because, like I said, when he was at the Union, even though he wasn't playing as a number 10, he is a guy that kind of plays like a number 10 and has good vision in terms of passing and setting up a beautiful ball to teammates to potentially hitting the back of the net. And yeah, you know, I think he could definitely be the playmaker of this team in case if FC Cincinnati is not going to bring that number 10. Now, speaking of that number 10, FC Cincinnati has been linked with some players that is going to be playing in that spot. One of the most notable names that they've been linked with was this guy called Gaston Pereiro, who they've been linked with them all off season. So far, there hasn't really been any reports saying that they're getting very close to getting Pereiro. But if they could get Pereiro, that is another guy that I think could make just as big of an impact as they did when they signed Jurgen Locadia. And in fact, if they can sign Pereiro, I could say that they could be right on the borderline of actually making the playoffs, because now they have a number 10 that's proven to be a good kind of playmaker for the team, and you know, he would be the main guy to set up balls from Locadia and Kubo to basically put it into the back of the net. Now, MVP for this team, again, I'm going to put Jurgen Locadia with a question mark because, as I said, if Pereiro does come to this team, he could potentially be the MVP of this team, depending on if he can of course set up those chances and set up those service for Locadia to strike. But if he's not going to be coming to FC Cincinnati, I think Locadia is definitely going to be the MVP because of the fact that he's going to be the guy that going to be the goal scorer of this team and going to try to carry as much of the load of this team in terms of the goal scoring department. But in terms of the surprise package for FC Cincinnati, I'm going to go with Brandon Vasquez. Vasquez, you know, it's kind of unfortunate it didn't quite work out for him at Atlanta. I mean, you know, he did get a couple of starts with Atlanta, and doing those limited starts with Atlanta, he actually was very decent, and that he is one of those young guys that I can definitely see he could have some talent if he can get regular minutes. Now, the thing about him joining FC Cincinnati is that originally we thought he was going to get starting minutes, but now with the way that they got Locadia and Kubo as the striker, that makes me think that Vasquez might be relegated to be coming off the bench again, or unless if they decided to play Vasquez in a different position besides striker, then I don't think he's going to get the starting minutes that he was hoping when he comes to FC Cincinnati. But nevertheless, this guy, when he was playing with limited minutes with Atlanta, did very well and scored a couple of goals. So there's no doubt that if he's going to start with FC Cincinnati, or if he's going to be coming off the bench and use as a weapon to basically sub out one of the striker and bring him in, he could definitely be a dangerous weapon as a super sub. So yep, I'm going to say Brandon Vasquez is going to be one of the surprise package for FC Cincinnati. But now, in terms of what I'm excited about this team, well, they will improve this year. And I know that sounds very general, but last season it was clearly the rock bottom for them, and that they really bottomed out in terms of their overall season. So, you know, when you hit rock bottom, there's really nowhere but up for them to go. And even though if they are going to finish dead last again heading into this season, at least I think they're not going to just have 6 wins overall. And, you know, last season, one of the things that I also see with this team is that as we get to near the end of the season, they started to kind of show some progress that they can actually be a decent team. I mean, I know they were still losing game and they were still drawing games, but they kind of looked like a competent team for the last couple of games of the season, and that they weren't just gonna be a rollover for team to play, or a punching bag whenever an opponent face against them. And hence, you know, when I mentioned there was one part of when I did the moving forward series for them, and I talked about how they already concede like 72 goals, and I was very concerned the fact that they were going to be the first team to concede 80 goals. Well, guess what? They didn't concede 80 goals, and that they didn't actually even came close to concede 80 goals, and that just kind of shows me that their defense kind of started to figure out, and that, you know, they started to finally not be a team that's just gonna let goals go into the back of net with ease and just have some just high school level kind of defending. And even though they weren't still scoring goals for the last couple of games of the season, at least their defense was much better. And if you're a team that has both bad offense and defense, and you cannot score and you can't defend, at least that's definitely progress. That at least you have shown that you can at least just not let goals go into the back end like crazy, and that they can at least have a good defensive shape and not losing games like 4 or 5-0. So at least that's kind of the progress, and that this year I think they're definitely going to show progress again, where I don't think they're going to give up like 75 goals like they did in the first season. They probably might still give up a ton of goals because, you know, as much as I know on the attacking end and in the midfield, they definitely bring in a couple of guys that they hope that could solidify those spots. But the defense is still kind of the same, and it's still kind of a little bit leaky well, it's still kind of a little bit leaky, and it's just still kind of, for me, I'm not convinced that this is a team that can be very, very, very good in terms of stopping opponents from scoring, and that maybe they're going to concede like 60 or close to 70 goals in the entire season. But I'm pretty sure they're not going to concede like 75 goals again like they did last season, and they're going to score more than 31 goals if they do have that right number 10, which that brings me back to that big question, and this is something that I've been kind of talking about throughout the video, and that is, who is their number 10, and that whether or not, if it is Gaston Pereiro that comes to this team to be their number 10, or they're just going to have to play somebody that is not a natural number 10, but he's going to be acting as like a number 10 and be the playmaker of this team. So yeah, there you have it. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you do, make sure you guys leave a like, smash that subscribe button. If you're an FC Cincinnati fan, what do you think of this, and what do you think of your off-season acquisition? The player, of course, is no longer with this club, which is majority of the starting 11 from last season. And who do you think is going to be the goal scored, playmaker, MVP, the surprise package? And what are you excited about this season? I mean, obviously, I'm pretty sure FC Cincinnati fans are going to be excited the fact that they probably will not be dead last again. Like, with this squad that they had, I definitely don't think they're going to be dead last. I can definitely see there are a couple of Eastern Conference teams that could definitely be worse than FC Cincinnati heading into this season. But at the same time, you know, the big question for them, you know, what do you think is the big question? Obviously, I put it as a number 10 that they need. And if they do get that number 10, can they potentially sneak into the playoffs? Like, obviously, I know this team is not going to be like, if they do get to the playoffs, it's probably going to be them just barely sneaking in as a 6 or 7 seed, because in the Eastern Conference there's a lot of top heavy teams, and that FC Cincinnati is definitely not there in terms of the tier to compete these top tier team. But they could definitely be a team that, you know, they do have good enough defense and have good enough attacking threat and started to win a couple of games. Then they could potentially sneak into the playoffs. And if they do sneak into the playoffs, what a miraculous comeback would this be? And that, you know, who knows? FC Cincinnati could potentially have the same story to what the Quakes had last season, where, you know, the Quakes, like FC Cincinnati the previous year prior to last season, had an astonishing 21 point season where it was by far the worst season in franchise history. And then the very next season, they immediately bounced back and they almost made it to the playoffs on the final day. Now, of course, a lot of that has to do with Almeida and how he kind of changed the culture. And in FC Cincinnati case, they won't kind of have that injection. They still have Ron Young as their manager, but at least when he was taking charge of this team, there was at least some stability, and at least this team started to not look like the joke of MLS. So maybe there's going to be progress heading into next season, and that maybe if they can maybe think about making a couple of more signings, they could potentially right there on the edge of being a playoff contender. But either way, hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I will see you guys next time.